Our next speaker is leading the fight against Amazon by mobilizing the entire United States labor movement to take on the e-commerce giant. But rather than introducing him myself, I want to give that honor to a special letter carrier who joined dozens of organizers from more than a dozen American unions to help workers in Bessemer, Alabama, fight for their rights to organize and to bargain collectively. Caroline Wyatt has been a letter carrier since 2012 and is active in Branch 530 in Birmingham, Alabama. Active, I guess, would kind of be an understatement. She serves as their recording secretary and as a shop steward for her branch, and volunteers as a letter carrier legislative liaison, and she writes for her branch newsletter. So brothers and sisters, please welcome a local hero of the NALC, Caroline Wyatt.
Hello, brothers and sisters. My name is Caroline Wyatt, and I'm a letter carrier from Branch 530, Birmingham, Alabama. For several months this year, I was also an organizer for the Retail, Wholesale, Department Store Workers Union campaign to organize the Amazon warehouse in Bessemer. I was joined in this work by my union sisters, Latanya Williams, Sequinthia Hudson, and Kimberly Thomas. It is my honor to introduce you to the president of RWDSU, Stuart Applebaum. Stuart was first elected president of RWDSU in 1998. He also serves as the vice president of the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, president of Uni Global's Unions Congress Sector, and chair of Unions Amazon Alliance, among many other roles in the labor movement. Brother Stuart is known for championing new models of organizing and has a strong union voice to many of the most vulnerable workers in the United States. He has also forged deep and productive alliances with the progressive movement, including civil rights organizations, immigrant workers, activists, faith leaders, and the LGBT movement. His reputation and dedication made it easy for the labor movement to rally around him and the RWDSU when he asked for help from his fellow union leaders to take on Amazon for a second time. After the National Labor Relations Board granted RWDSU the chance to rerun this election at Bessemer due to Amazon's extreme anti-union tactics in the first election, the union had little time to prepare. Unions from all different sectors sent staff and members to aid the organizing effort. I saw Stuart's dedication and how his leadership inspired others while working on their campaign. The hours were long, the miles were plenty, yet the energy of the campaign was not dampened. Unfortunately, the election was narrowly decided in Amazon's favor, once again, due to its outrageous scare tactics. But we learned a lot of valuable lessons. We look forward to supporting Stuart and the RWDSU however we can in the next campaign. Solidarity forever. Brothers and sisters, please join me in welcoming Stuart Applebaum, president of RWDSU.
Hello, everybody. I have to tell you, it's such a beautiful thing to see all of you here. When I look out at you, I see a strong union, I see a committed union, and I see union power. Caroline, I want to thank you for that introduction. And I want to thank you for what you did in Bessemer, Alabama. I thank you for your solidarity and your support. And I can't begin to tell all of you how honored I am and how good it is to be here with all of you today. I was absolutely delighted when President Rolando invited me. I was delighted for all sorts of reasons. First of all, I have great respect for your union, for your political operation, and for your leaders, especially your president, who I understand is going to be retiring soon in order to begin his new career as a starting pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. And I was delighted as well because I understand the importance and necessity of a strong and well-funded postal system for the sake of our democracy, something that it's in everybody's interest to protect. But there's more. I felt it was important to be here because both your union and mine share a common threat from Amazon and the way it operates, which is, of course, something I'm going to be talking about today. But there is another reason I'm really thrilled to be here, and it's a very personal reason. Postal unions have been an important part of my life for as long as I can remember. My father was a postal clerk in Hartford, Connecticut for more than 40 years, just like his uncle. And you can applaud for my dad. And as I was growing up, I would hear story after story after story about working for the post office. One of my favorites was about somebody who became president of my father's local, which was Local 147 in Hartford, Connecticut. And the president was named Doc Henderson. Doc was a part-time podiatrist who got a job as a clerk at the post office. And I always thought that was a very clever move because as a podiatrist, he had a never-ending supply of patients, all of you. But more seriously, as I was growing up, I saw very clearly firsthand the difference a union can make. I saw the difference that the historic Great Postal Strike of 1970 made in my own family's well-being. I learned early on from that strike the power of unions to stand up and win, and the difference it made for my own family. And I think that is a big part of the reason why I wanted to be part of the labor movement and that I am standing here today. And in fact, it was a scholarship I received from my dad's local that helped me pay for my education. I will never, ever stop being grateful. The last 2.5 years have been very rough. The pandemic changed a lot of things in people's lives, but it has taught us a lot of things too. One thing that became more evident than ever before because of the pandemic was that society could not have survived without the working people we represent. People who went to work every day despite their fears. People who did their jobs people who didn't have the option of working from home, people who couldn't work remotely, workers like you, and workers like those in my own union, in supermarkets, and in healthcare, and in food production, and in so many other jobs. In a supermarket, for instance, you could be exposed to 1,000 people in a single day, and you were afraid, but you went to work. These workers were on the front lines, and tragically, many got sick, and many even died. Hundreds in my own union. Too many of these workers had been invisible for far too long. The value they provided, the contribution they made was underappreciated. But now people were beginning to understand that these workers, all of us, were essential if we didn't want society to collapse. But as we all know, they were essential before the pandemic, they were essential during the pandemic, and they will always be essential. For a while, during the pandemic, people would thank them. That was nice at the time. But these workers, essential workers, needed more than words. They needed health and safety protections, fair pay, and good benefits. They needed a union. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, too many employers and politicians demonstrated a blatant disregard for the health and safety of working people. In one poultry plant down south, one employer had to put up protective barriers. But when they did, they put up partitions between workers made out of saran wrap. In another, the company said it only had enough PPE for the supervisors, but not the workers on the floor. People were not protected until the union stood up to make sure they were protected as best they could be. You didn't want to just take the boss's word that you would be okay, especially when your life depended on it. You needed your union's voice and protection. So many learned for the very first time something else too during the pandemic, that unions can make a difference in people's lives. Unions fought for and negotiated for better health and safety protections during the pandemic, measures that undoubtedly saved lives. Unions even negotiated for wages where they could, higher wages, and more paid time off to deal with COVID exposure and child care needs. Across America, people have seen the union advantage. Over 2/3 of all Americans now support unionization in the workplace, the highest level in 55 years. And the number is even higher among millennials. And we have to take advantage of the moment. And that includes standing up to Amazon. My union has been standing up to Amazon for several years, one of the most powerful companies in the world, controlled by one of the wealthiest people in the history of the planet. It's about how workers will be treated everywhere and rights they will be able to exercise anywhere. The RWDS stood up to Amazon in 2019 when Amazon attempted to open its second global headquarters in New York City after a national competition that you may have heard about. But we said, after they chose New York City, that unless Amazon changed the way it operated, we didn't want their headquarters in our city. We enlisted allies and put on pressure, but Amazon refused to change, and it lost that battle, and we forced them to walk away. And that was a very big deal, and it proved that Amazon can be beat. We just did the same thing in New Jersey, where Amazon wanted to build an air hub at Newark Airport. We demanded that Amazon meet labor and community standards if they wanted to operate there. They refused, and so their air hub plans in New Jersey had to be canceled too. And we have stood up to Amazon on the world stage with our partners around the world as part of UNI's Amazon Global Alliance, because no matter where they operate around the world, they mistreat their employees. But we knew that all that still wasn't enough. We needed something else if we were going to make a difference. We needed to bring them to an election in order to make clear what they were really about. Less than 2 years ago, workers at a newly built Amazon warehouse outside of Birmingham, Alabama, in Bessemer, Alabama, approached us. They had seen how vocal we had been and what we were able to accomplish when we were protecting other workers throughout the state of Alabama during the pandemic. And they wanted our help too. After just a few months since it opened, they knew Amazon was unlike anything they had seen before, and that the working conditions were intolerable, and that the company had no interest in keeping them safe during the greatest public health crisis in our lifetimes. In fact, in the 2.5 years since the facility has opened, 6 Amazon workers have either died in the facility or died on their way to the hospital from the facility. They can't bear the working conditions. The pressure is too great. Every motion you make is monitored. You are watched constantly. There are over 1,000 cameras in the warehouse. You can't keep up with the pace. There are more calls to suicide hotlines, suicide prevention hotlines from within Amazon facilities than from any other place. So when workers at that Amazon warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama, spoke out and demanded a union last year, it was seen as a quixotic effort by my union. There had never, ever been a single union election before for any Amazon warehouse in the United States in the 27-year history of the company. But it was about time. We were taking on one of the wealthiest and most powerful companies on the planet in a part of the country that has often proven difficult for union organizing efforts. But in the process, these workers ignited a movement that is being felt all over the country, and they opened the door to organizing elsewhere, at Amazon and at other companies. The campaign was covered extensively from the very start. People all over the country and all over the world learned how you go about forming a union in this country. And people learned about union busting. They understood for the first time what companies will do, how far employers will go to crush any potential union organizing. The results of that first election for union representation a year and a half ago were thrown out by the National Labor Relations Board because of the company's improper and illegal behavior. The NLRB ordered a new election, and in that new election, the challenge ballots are going to determine the outcome. And those Bessemer workers are now waiting for the challenge ballots to be counted and for the final results of their government-ordered rerun election. It was a beautiful thing to see Caroline, to see more than 20 unions, including the letter carriers, come together and send organizers to Bessemer, Alabama. Fred, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. It's the only way to take on Amazon, through a united labor movement. Everybody working together. It's too big for any one union. And I promise you this, no matter the results in Bessemer for the rerun election, and I promise the workers in Bessemer this too, the American labor movement is not going away. And just a few months ago, the workers at a warehouse in Staten Island became the first Amazon warehouse workers anywhere in the country to form a union with the Amazon Labor Union led by Chris Smalls. Regardless of whatever may be the results of the second election in Alabama, the workers at these two locations have done something historic and opened the door to further organizing all across America at Amazon and elsewhere. Workers everywhere now understand that if you can stand up to Amazon with all its money and all its power and with its 1.1 million employees, even in Alabama and even in New York, then you can come together and stand up to your employers anywhere in this country. A wildfire is spreading. A movement is building. Organizing encourages further organizing. This is our moment. It is the moment for all of us to come together and to help workers throughout our economy join together and organize. And someday we will be able to say, It all began in Bessemer. It all began at Amazon. It all began at Starbucks and REI. It all began with all of us, including all of you right here in this room, choosing to make a difference and standing up and speaking out and building the labor movement. Thank you very much.